Texas. Ms. Garcia is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses today. I just want to be mindful of the topic of this subcommittee, how mandates like ESG distort markets and drive up costs for insurance and housing. And Mr. Chair, I've got to admit, I sat and listened to all the opening statements, and I'm not sure that any one of our witnesses really gave us any example or any real data in connection between the disclosure requirements, which is simply about data and being transparent to disclose what you're doing, to how it actually distorts markets and drives insurance costs. I mean, I've been listening, but again, it's just a reminder to the people back home that, again, this is just about transparency. It's about making sure we have the data to make the right decisions in terms of investors and consumers. So instead of addressing real problems that my district faces, like high housing and insurance costs and accessibility, we're here today because Republicans are trying to forbid simple common sense data from being the public. For some reason, they've gotten on these anti-ESG and anti-woke crusade, whatever that means. It's really perplexing because, again, in my district, we're worried about natural disasters. We're worried about the next hurricane season. We're worried about flooding because in Houston and in Texas, that has happened more often than we can talk about. And ma'am, I know Ms. Nagy, I think you said that it was California and Florida that have a lot of the flood. You know, Texas does too. In Houston and in our region is very flood prone. For us, it's not about if we'll have a disaster, it's when it will come. So that's why insurance and housing costs are of utmost importance to me and my constituents. And it's very, very relevant and right now, especially as we're facing hurricane season. I know that my home state has already tried to dabble in all this issue. They passed a bill, SB 833, that banned ESG risk analysis in the insurance sector. And surprise, surprise, it drew a lot of opposition from a host of insurance trade groups. So again, ESG is data and disclosure. And I think all our witnesses have frankly have failed to connect the dots as to how that it affects the markets, increases insurance rates, and impacts housing. Any Republican-led constraints on risk analysis or limitation on data should be seen as antithetical to the entire business model of insurance industry. There is now widespread concern that Texas bill will deter more insurance companies from entering Texas market at a moment when growing flood risk has already made the Texas insurance market highly vulnerable. I've already heard about insurance companies leaving other high-risk states like California and Florida, as was mentioned earlier, denying consumers choices and coverage they desperately need and deserve. And this is what it's all about, is being able to give the consumer and the investor the choices to make the right decisions based on the data that is disclosed. So, Ms. Nagy, I have a question for you. Given that insurance is a major channel through which climate risk is transmitted to the financial system, can you speak to the dangers of restricting insurance companies from using data and risk analysis in doing their business?
Yes. So in terms of, I think I understand. You're talking about, you're referring to the Texas anti-ESG law that prohibits insurers.
Right, but we don't have to speak specifically about the Texas law. Where it just, I think that's what some of my colleagues would like to do nationally. But can you speak to the dangers in restricting insurance companies? Because again, I think, was it you who mentioned that, we really have no role in this other than the national flood insurance. Most of the other, all the insurances are go through their state systems for their doing business. So I'm really not even sure why we're doing this hearing. We should be focused on extending the National Flood Insurance Program and improving it and make it affordable and make it accessible, especially to flood-prone areas like us. But apparently we're dealing with it. So could you tell me what the dangers are?
Well, I mean, absolutely. Climate change is real, and insurers need to be able to take that into account when setting rates. The public, too, deserves transparency in terms of how are rates being set, and where are folks having higher or lower rates. I think both cases,
Mr. Chairman, I did have a couple of other questions. I'll submit them to you for the record to get the responses in writing.
I appreciate